And then I usually just aim it at me so that I'm not messing with FERPA, right?
What was that?
FERPA is the federal something or other thing that says you're not allowed to post things about students, et cetera.
Right.
So, try not to break FERPA rules. So like the picture I took of the class, I won't post on the web. It will be just on my computer, so I'll be able to look at it and say, who are these people? Hopefully I'll get to know some of you. It's kind of a Lincoln thing. I'll know some of you some of the time. I'll know all of you some of the time, but I won't know all of you all of the time. Remember Lincoln, you can fool some of the people some of the time. You can even fool all of the people some of the time. You just can't fool all of the people all of the time.
I didn't know that was Lincoln.
That was Lincoln. He probably stole it from someone else.
Most intelligent people do.
That's where they get their intelligence. Which brings up this class. So if we go to Intro to Philosophy, this is the only section of Intro that I'm doing this spring. And we have a theme. We're introducing, well, you could read it if you like, but we're doing that. My special note is just to let you know that if you're not used to syllabi being on web pages, I have lots of links that you could use, but a lot of the links I link to are not mine. That's, you know how the internet works, right? So I love links, I'll put links there, but I'm not responsible for the link remaining there or not changing, etc. Or if you find something offensive there, I don't know, like if you find if you find something offensive about swans making love to beautiful women, it's not my fault. I did not post these. I'm just interested in why on earth would people post all those?
So offensive.
Everybody's got to have a picture of a swan. Whoa. So I don't know why that is. So if I have something that I link to that has something like that, it's not my fault. I didn't do it. Does that make sense? Okay. Student outcomes, I just made that up myself because we had to have something there. It's true. And so you don't have to worry about that either. That's mostly there for accreditation. When they come in the fall, they're going to check all of our syllabi and make sure that we've got the right things there.
It's like formatting issues.
We do have a text for the course, although if it turns out you can't afford it, well, looks like most of you, a lot of you have it. So this will be the text. But these are mostly newer articles, but you can find all sorts of things on the web. So if you need to avoid buying, how much was it? $90?
Oh, it was more than that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I went on Amazon. Mine's on its way, but I was
I rented
like,
mine online. It's like an ebook.
yeah, I was not about to pay full price for it.
Years ago, I was thinking, there's so much on the web. All I have to do is just post links that you could just read. And the dean called me. He said, "You didn't order a book." I said, "Well, I'm just going to use the web." He said, "No, you have to order a book." I said, "Yes, sir." So I order a book.
But you don't need it, just so we're clear.
You probably will want to read the articles. We'll discuss them. But you probably will be fine without them.
No, I meant like you can find the articles online.
You might not find the specific article online,
Okay.
but you'll find relevant
Okay.
things to that same discussion. Because I even help you with my own links here. Let me explain my grade. How many of you would like to get an A in the course? Everyone. Okay, that's all right. I can do that. I can give everybody an A. It used to be, I don't know if I have writing devices. I can give you black. It used to be, it's called the bell curve. Right? Heard of it?
Yeah.
So it used to be that you would have, some people would get A's, some people would get B's, but the average grade for most everybody was a C. And then of course there would be the D's and even the F's, right? Well today we've gotten rid of excellence. And instead now we give everybody A's, B's, some C's. Right? You see how that works? Oh, wait. Subliminally, notice that looks like a breast. But I won't point that out to you because I don't want to get in trouble. But we've gotten rid of excellence.
By the way, my last professor in this class last semester broke it, so you can thank him.
That's amazing.
Budget. It doesn't work.
Nope.
So now we have A's. Oh, that's even more breast-like. Surgically altered, etc. So how do you get an A in this class? Show up.
Good start.
It's a good start. But there's other things you could do. You could do exams. I have exams. In fact, to get an A, you have to do the exams. So I have 3 exams. They're already posted. And the format's the same for all 3 of them. I post 6 questions and ask you to pick 3 and email 300 words. Is that okay?
I love that.
That's
This is
okay?
fabulous.
Yeah.
It's like
For
Christmas.
each-
You are Santa.
For each question, right? So
Oh,
300
yeah.
words for that one, 3 for the 3 that you picked. Question?
That was more of my question.
Are we gonna get knocked for being a bit more verbose?
Not at all. Please do. If you want to use more than 3, please. That's great. Yes.
So before we turn it in, can we consult you with what we wrote and then see if you would?
Yes, but here's how I grade them. I will pull it up in Microsoft Word, and I'll look at the properties, and if for the whole test, for all 3 questions, there's 900 plus words, that's an A. And then I read it. So I'm not so much worried about what you say or how you say it or even what language you use. If I get the word count, that's an A, because that was a requirement, right?
Awesome.
But the reason I think that way is because the most impressive education I ever had was the year I spent at Monterey and learned Russian. Ja еще говорю очень хорошо по-русски. And that was 78 that I went to Monterey. Of course, I had 16 years, 9 months, and 3 days of a career, so I had that much time that I spent speaking Russian. However, it's really impressive to me. And it was immersion, right? You know, immersion with Russian teachers, just speaking Russian the whole year, and then afterwards, right? And so it's the volume.
Russia did you live in?
Pardon?
What part of Russia did you live in?
Not allowed to go to Russia. I have a top secret clearance. I had top secret clearance, so I couldn't go. But you don't have to go to Russia to hear Russian. I was in Berlin for 3 years. Then the NSA for 4.5 years. So yeah, I'm one of those guys. And then here at Fort Rich for a while, annoyed the heck out of our folks out in the field.
Oh dear.
He kept trying to do things, and we kept going, and they, you stop that. I've got men out there. I need to get them back.
What part of the NSC what did you do in the military?
I was a 98 Gulf Russian and German, and I also passed my test in German and French. So I had all 3 language trailers. So I intercepted and translated
That's impressive.
with my
And those old ones too, right?
the big clunky, yeah,
Clarks.
the gray
Yeah.
with the
No pad, nothing. Just have a little
just
mic.
typed, with a keyboard that was Russian. So I've been screwed up ever since. I used to be able to speak English, but now I'm not so sure. Because every once in a while I slip into something else, and I don't know what it is.
I heard that happens. You start thinking in
Duh.
another language. Yeah.
Duh. Очень часто. You speak Russian? Нет? Schade. That's German. Sorry. Du sprichst auch Deutsch?
No, not really.
No.
I took it a little bit in high school.
Well, I didn't. I took one German course in college. And what a waste of money. Because it's just German. I mean, it's English with a German accent. So all you have to do is speak English, but sound like you're German, and then you're good. Hand, Fuß, Auge, Mund, Kopf. I don't know. Is that English? That's German, though. Lippen. How schwer is that? Pretty easy. Sehr leicht. So I passed my test in German, no problem. Kein Problem. And then I might as well take the French one. Why not? And so I did that one too. So. But I had lots of years of French. So that was the language I passed for my graduate level stuff. So, but I can't speak French. I can hear it and not know what the hell they were saying. Because it's in French. Mon Dieu. So yes, I'm weird. But remember, it's a requirement for this position. That's okay. So yes, I believe in volume. All learning is essentially language learning, unless it's like, hammering, rowing. There are physical things, of course. But even so, notice I said hammering, that's a vocabulary. Rowing, oaring, that's vocabulary. So we've figured out a way to make even physical learning require cognitive learning somehow. But so what's the best way to learn vocabulary? Immersion. And if I'm asking you to type a paper on Socrates, and you're worried about what I might think about what you say, you're going to be very hesitant about what you write. But if I don't care what you say, I just care that you say a lot, you'll feel free, no worries. Great opportunity, right? You just say, and besides my mother, what does that have to do with Socrates? I don't know, but it's a word. You're in. And hopefully you'll be using philosophical vocabulary, which means you're getting your ground in philosophy, so that when you get out there and someone says, Socrates,
What a drunk.
you can say, so that's Greek for all, krates, the power. So all the power. Yeah, he was the guy that always won. He had all the power. That's why they killed him. Because he lost. That's confusing. That's a puzzle. Aristophanes. Did you ever read any of Aristophanes' plays?
Yeah.
The frogs, or there's all kinds of weird. Aristophanes was kind of the Greek Monty Python, right? So if you read Lysistrata, right? So Lysistrata.
Lord Austria, so, what has the Assembly decided about the amendment for that treaty today? What's that got to do with you, my husband would say? Won't you shut up? So I shut up. Well, I wouldn't have shut up.
You'd have regretted it if you hadn't shut up.
Wow. Okay.
You get the idea. It's a play,
Easy, your own mother will recognise you when you get home.
a great play, English version. But so this is the play where the men are constantly at war for different towns, and so the women decide to go on a sex strike until they stop.
Clever.
Oh my God.
And so it's hilarious.
Terrible.
There's, I don't know if this particular stage production does it, but my teacher talked about, the guys coming in with bundles of wood and buckets, so it looked like there were penises walking across the stage. Because they were all, hilarious. Well, Aristo means best, and Phanes means show. So Aristophanes won Best Show 2 years in a row in Athens. And guess what? His name means best show. You find that odd? Aristotle means Aristo means best, and telos means purpose or design. So his philosophy is the best arrangement of all knowledge. Is that his name or is that his title?
Yes.
Yes. Good use of the word "or" in a way that you use both. That's right. Who else? All of them. Plato. Plato means broad. It's like the word plate or plateau, right? Right? And it was a nickname. And why did they call him broad? Basically because he had broad shoulders and he was a good wrestler, right? There was other possible, some might have thought of him as a fathead. There's other things, that they might have called him fatso, it could be, but Plato. His real name was Aristocles, but Aristocles means the best. Cles, honor of, so the honor of the best, and he's an elitist. That's like exactly, so it looks almost like all the ancients' names were the titles of what they were famous for. But nowhere does it say that. Just puzzlement. They say that about Moses. So how many folks have heard about Moses? Do you even know which Moses I mean? Parting the Red Sea, all that stuff. The tablets. First quiz question, by the way. Email me your response to this. What are the 10 Commandments? Just for fun. But so Moses, the word Moses, or as I understand in the Hebrew, it's Moshe, means to draw out. So we could figure, well, what they typically say is that he was taken out of the river. Remember, his mother put him in the basket and floated him down the river? Mm-hmm. And Pharaoh's daughter pulled him out. But the other possibility, of course, is that he led the Jews, they weren't Jews then, they were the Hebrews, which means slave in Egyptian, right? He led them out of Egypt, right? So Moshe is his title, in a sense, because of what he does. Achilles. Heard of Achilles? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes. means not, like atom means uncuttable. Right? So when they figured out how to cut them, they should have renamed it. But they did, you know, that's pretty dumb. But Achilles means no honor. And if you read some translations, it says, Achilles, a man of grief. He is a man of grief because he had no honor. The reason he had no honor is because King Agamemnon took his prize, Briseis, of the fair cheeks. We never find out which cheeks are the fair ones, by the way. So, right, but they're fighting over her, right? Because she was Achilles' prize. Agamemnon had a prize, but the priest came out from Troy and said, "You've got to give her back. The gods are upset with you." Well, of course, she was his daughter, right? So, I've got to give her back. But now I don't have a prize and I'm the king. Well, you can take any prize you want. So he took Achilles' prize. And Achilles was like his main weapon, right? Right? End result is the Greeks now started to lose because Achilles decided not to fight anymore because he was pissed. You took my prize. I'm going to just sit here and cry. You took my prize.
Wow, mature.
Mature. Nuances. My favorite word is whatever.
Can you do that one more time?
Whatever.
Dear God.
Yes. Well, remember, I answered anything. So. You get it. That's funny too. So yeah, the Greek names puzzle me. Descartes, Rene Descartes. Descartes, Descartes of the Mac. Like the Magna Carta, right? What's Descartes most famous for? The Cartesian system, mapping system. But his father's name was Descartes. So that's a real puzzlement. How did he happen to end up with the name that matched the thing he was most famous for? That's just really puzzling. Maybe someday you'll figure the answer out, because I have no clue how that all works out. Okay. Back to work. I enjoy myself, so. Okay, so 3 tests like this, where I ask you questions, you answer them, and I check the volume of words that you've used. If you have the requisite number, then you get an A, and then I read it, and I will send you a response. A thoughtful, response. Very interesting about your mother, but what does that have to do with Socrates?
You a fast reader?
Yes. Especially if it's stuff I'm familiar with. It's like, yes, I got it.
What's that?
That happens. You'll see that yourself as you go. So the big one though is the term project, which is due by the end of the semester. And that's where you do 3,000 words on a particular topic, and that is a philosopher of your choice. And the ones I want you to pick from, hopefully, are on this list. You see this is a link. It's almost invisible there, but if you click on the list, I have philosophers there. You can come up with other ones. Did you have a question or no?
No, sorry.
No, you can always ask questions. There are dumb questions, but that's okay. Yes?
Is there a certain format you like those in? Like APA?
No,
or-
no. I will immediately check the properties. If there's 3001
Okay.
word A for you.
Okay.
There's 2,979. I'm like, I'll email you back and say, that's just 21 words short. Can you say, well, what words would you like me to say? Yes, you made it. Now you're done.
Oh my.
It's that,
Fantastic.
enjoy. And you could use Wikipedia as a resource.
Awesome. Yep.
Just no copy paste.
You know, the people that think, well, yeah, copy paste, that works provided you put quotations around it.
Right. And bibliography and all that?
Yeah, and a link would be good.
Yeah.
There are philosophers that are, well, you're philosophers. What is a philosopher? A philosopher is someone who loves wisdom. Literally, philia is love, wisdom. Philia in the sense like Philadelphia, city of brotherly love, right? Philia is friendship, really. Right? You like this subject, so you can love. You know, philia you can apply to whatever you like, right? And that's different than eros. Eros is the god of love, which we think of as sexual love. Right? Philia is different. Pardon?
It would be E-R-I-S, right? Is that Eris?
E-R-O-S usually. Of course, in Greek it's epsilon, rho, omicron, sigma. So that would be different. Sigma's the one that goes like this. But you could pick other ones. The one that really bugs me though is Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand.
Where?
I don't have her on there, but if you're familiar with Ayn Rand.
Atlas Shrugged, stuff like that.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
incredibly detailed writer. That's into the minutia, descriptive.
Annoying for lots of reasons, actually. So I've told people, no, please don't do her. And they say, yes, I will. And I go, okay. You know how that works. If they're really into her.
Why?
She's popular. She's kind of a pop philosopher of a certain time period. Still is. Yes.
So we can use any philosophers, right? I mean, we can go back
Yes.
to,
Yeah, and McCaffrey's gone.
you know.
Well, I have some listed here. I'm hoping that you'll pick a live person. And
All right.
Ayn Rand is actually dead too. That's another reason not to pick her. Some of these, like these are four that I think are great, but they're almost dead.
They're almost.
Yeah, they're mostly dead, not completely dead, but they're mostly dead.
But as long as they're alive before you write the paper, you know. I mean, it would kind of suck. You write the paper
Well,
and the
these-
day after they die, and you're like, oh, SOL.
Bummer. Gotta start over.
These are not living, so I still have them on the list.
Oh, but C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, one of the most popular.
He's awesome.
And that's due like last day of class.
I
Or
have
just
the due
before
dates.
last day of class?
I have the due dates on the syllabus
Okay, perfect.
as you go. And the syllabus should be right, although I just got the email from Eagle River the other day, and I've got my finals posted on exactly the opposite, so I have to fix
okay.
those. Sorry about that. And since my machine is downtown, I have to go downtown to fix it. And this weekend, with the way the weather was, I would, not going out with the car.
You said your office is in Eagle River?
I have an office in the admin building on main campus.
Oh.
They have a area where we can hang out downstairs. So we can meet here if you would like. Even after class, I don't have anything else after class, so we can hang out after class if you feel like, that's, or jitters, anything.
It's a little crowded.
Yeah. It's just always the one that people say, you want jitters, okay.
Oh, but Sleepy Dog's so much more
Sleepy
comfortable.
dog, sleepy
Yeah.
dog.
Sleepy Dog's really nice.
Jitters is more fun to say though.
Or my house, I'm just up the hill.
Oh yeah, it's good in my house.
Wait, off Skyline?
I'm on Holitna Circle,
Not
so you know where Homestead Elementary is?
Oh.
I'm just down the street.
Way up
from-
Eagle River Road, like.
Not that far. It's like if you go up
Past Eagle River Lane?
Firehouse Road, right on Old Eagle River Road, left on Meadow Creek, all the way up to Chain of Rock, right on Chatham Rock, up on Chilcat, right on Halitna, left into my driveway. So it's like all the way up.
It's like, is it near that tower?
It's up near where the owl was hooting last night. Right. I don't know how you get the question. Yes? So let me talk about this though, because this is an interesting plagiarism. So you're not supposed to plagiarize, and you'll notice that I don't, compared to other teachers, I don't hand out paper syllabi. I have it posted on the web. You can use devices in class. So if some teachers say no internet, no games, no fun, in class, I'm just the opposite. Have, as long as you're not irritating the person next to you. But like
that,
I
sorry.
like that because I
Yeah.
usually dance to the music. I think that's cool. You're welcome to have. But if you have a phone call and you're going to talk, you should.
It's a lot, yeah.
That's just because. But yeah. But if you're on your computer and I say something stupid, right? Really, really dumb, like Galileo Galilei was the best friend of the Pope. You could check it.
Yes.
And if we're on Facebook, which I'm on Facebook, you can, and we'll pop up here and say, what an idiotic thing to say. Look, see, the Pope was like, I don't like him anymore because he called me simplicitous. Okay, what's that mean, idiot, right?
That's when we were doing indulgences, right?
No,
That was
that's
after.
Martin Luther.
Oh.
Galileo wasn't concerned about indulgences. He was concerned about so
Flatness there.
does the earth go around? No, they weren't worried about flat.
They were worried about flat.
Columbus wasn't worried about flat. They all knew, Aristotle knew the earth was round. They even came close to measuring how big it was, actually. Right? But they did think it was the center of the universe. And Galileo,
Oh yeah, with glass spheres, that's right.
Galileo used a telescope and discovered that Venus was not going around the Earth, but was going around the sun.
The fact that they could see that far out, I still think is amazing back then.
He also discovered sunspots on the sun, because he spent a lot of time staring at the sun with his telescope. By the way, Galileo was blind. At the end of his life, he was blind. I happen to know exactly why he was blind. You stare at the sun with a telescope, you will be blind. That's just the way that works.
Second note, James Burke. You familiar with James Burke? Connections series?
No. Maybe. I'm terrible on names, but.
I wonder if you qualify for a philosopher. He's
Oh,
fascinating.
yeah, I'm sure. Elephants are good philosophers. You ever seen a real elephant? You could tell just looking at them that they're sitting there thinking philosophically. Of course, they don't write very much.
They can paint if they want
They
to.
can't, oh, yes. Sad. We lost her.
I have a painting.
And majors
you-
are fun
that's
to
good.
do that too.
Yeah. She was actually using the template.
Really? I knew it.
I used to do that. You draw the lines that we. Dolphins are great philosophers. If you think about it. So, yeah. But email me with your suggestion. But so what is plagiarism? You've heard of it, right? Other teachers say you shouldn't plagiarize. I'm absolutely convinced that that's all you can do. Because everything you think you got from somebody else. You're just mixing them up into your own ideas, right? and you don't, like, I haven't been footnoting all my thoughts that I've been, but all of my thoughts I got from somebody else.
So are humans capable of unique thought?
Well, I think unique thought is when you take a couple of thoughts you already have learned from somebody else, and you mix them together, and you get a third one that they didn't think of. Right? Does that make sense?
You just go on the internet, look at all the memes, and understand humans have a unique thought process.
Oh,
Originality.
yeah, yeah. But like my favorite word, whatever, you know, that's not my word. Although I think it's unusual for you to hear it from a male. Usually it would be
Especially when you got that South Cali accent going.
whatever.
Ever.
Oh, but that sound that women make, you know, when they go, "Aber," you know, oh my goodness, it drives males crazy. I was walking on campus once, and it was a summer, and a woman was walking the other way, a young student, I guess, was walking the other way on her cell phone, and as she walked by me, I overheard her saying on the phone to the person, "You're such a bad boy."
Yay. Oh my
And I was
gosh.
like, so wished I was that bad boy, you know. The way she said that, I was like,
You didn't ask?
missing that. Pardon?
You didn't ask?
No. I've been married 45 years. Not going to screw it up now. So plagiarism. Where does it come from? I actually, if you click on this link, it used to go to old online encyclopedia in Carta, no longer there. But basically, that's where I stole this from.
That's quicker than a notation.
Yes. And some of them still work, like Ecclesiastes. Oh, I won't click on that because that actually takes you to Ecclesiastes, so you can imagine the Bible loading on the web page. So let's not do that. You know, but we can quote at length. Notice I put quotations here. You see the quote marks right here? And then down here, at the end of this quote, right after here. And then there's the link. It came from there. And this is the title, etc. Or we can use our own words, and then you don't use quotations, but you still should put a link. Does that make sense? Because it's not your idea. It's where did it come from? But have you ever heard of the dialectizer? This is cool. So the dialectizer, you can take stuff from the internet and plug it into or you can put the URL right here, and then you get to pick the dialect. So you can use redneck, jive, Cockney, Elmer
Oh my
Fudd,
gosh, that's awesome.
Moron.
You run it in here and it will transform it. So it's not the same as it was when you found it.
Huh.
So when you take something from there and then give it to me in your term paper, like I took this paragraph, but you might ask if all my ideas come from someone else. I ran it through the dialectizer on redneck, and I got, but you ma ax. F and all my ideas come from someone else, and I was just mixing them up with my ideas.
Is that redneck?
That's redneck.
That's so bad. No.
That was redneck?
I could read it in the appropriate accent if you need me to.
Oh, no.
Ochin her show. I can talk like I'm from Philly too, because I was. Wait a minute, I'm not fully in. I'm still Midwest there. Let me move.
Further south, I'm trying to get down to
I was born and raised, you know, in Philly, so I could talk like I'm from there. You know, that's pretty easy for me. No problemo, you know. Texan's a little more difficult. Y'all,
Yeah.
etc. Thank ye. See, San Angelo. Angelo. I can't really do Texan. However, oh, it's great. Language baffles me. However, this is fun. But if you were to give me these words, they would be your, I mean, would they be your words or were they the quote? But now you used a tool to run it through Redneck. Is that plagiarism?
Still plagiarism.
Still plagiarism.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Everybody still thinks so.
But it's not.
Oh, I don't know.
Let's rephrase.
How do we decide?
It's based on someone else's idea.
Yeah, well, how about this? This is interesting. Because if you go to this page, every time you click on it, you get a complete term paper with footnotes and everything. So here we have context of genre, dialectic neo-capitalist theory in the works of Guyman. You can always just delete the author's name, put your name there, and then turn it in. You know, consensuses of absurdity. Society is part of the utility of culture, says Lyotard. The primary theme of Drucker's model of socialist realism is the role of the participant as artist, etc. Right? Well, here's the thing. If I click on this, you know how I would check to see if this is plagiarism or not is Google something that you wrote on the web. And you know what? I would never be able to find that this was plagiarized because if you click on that web page again, the web page changes. It's a different term paper. In fact, if I click on it again, it's another term paper. Only once did two students click on the same link at the same time and got the same page. But otherwise, every time it's totally different. So it's inimitable. No one can copy it. I mean, you could copy it, paste it in as your work, and no one will ever be able to find that it was plagiarized from any source because the term paper is always different.
But is it always the same subject?
It's always postmodern, concerned with postmodernism, because it's a postmodern algorithm that they're running. Right? So this is interesting. This is connected to what's called the Sokol affair. So Dr. Sokol, Alan Sokol, thought that postmodern journals were absolutely useless, worthless, that they weren't really speaking a real language. People were just totally wasting their time. And so to prove it, what he did was he created a computer algorithm, downloaded a database of phrases from postmodern journals, ran the program, came up with an article, sent it to a postmodern journal for publication, and they accepted it. And the same month that they published it, he published an article in a science journal explaining what he had done to them. Right? And so everybody thought, aha, proof that postmodern journals are nonsense. Meanwhile, a couple of MIT grads took his algorithm, downloaded science articles, ran it through the algorithm, came up with a science article, sent it to a science journal, and it was accepted.
That's beautiful.
So what have we learned from this?
It's all bullshit.
Do anyway.
Well, bullshit, yeah, we could call it that. so they get you a BS degree, right? If you get an MS degree, that's more shit. And of course, if you go for the PhD, it's piled higher and deeper, right? You've heard that, I'm sure.
Yep.
But the really interesting, serious message that this tells us is that what we're doing, what we're learning, is we're accumulating a vocabulary, and we're learning how to manipulate it in the right algorithm so that we get the term paper, or the essay, or the article, right? So as long as you got the database and you rearrange them, and you're basically doing what computers are learning to do, by the way, and pretty soon computers are going to take over this job, they say.
Without being able to internalize all that information, you give yourself like a personal perspective on what you're writing. What is the point?
Well, I think that is the point. I don't think there's more point to it than that, maybe. We can make something up, maybe. But I think what we're essentially doing is learning this process. So when you're writing term papers in college, what I think is happening is that you're learning how to write term papers. Now, that's still going to be useful, so BP hires you, they give you an assignment, okay, do a report on all of the oil production this week, right? So now you know how to download all the information, and you've got the algorithm for the paper, and you do the paper, and they pay you.
At least 150 grand a year.
Could be actually, yeah. So learning how to write term papers is preparing you for the real jobs, the majority of jobs that are out there. Writing is considered to be our most critical skill. And we also think of it as critical thinking because you're figuring out whether, I mean, that's part of the algorithm.
Epiphanies happen when you write.
And when you look at how this algorithm works, a scientist had to think it up. A computer didn't come up with it. A scientist came up with the algorithm that does this. And by the way, you can download the algorithm. It's down at the bottom somewhere. They have a place where you can download what they call the Dada engine, if you want. But you have to use a Unix server to run it if you're into that.
BSD or something. BSD, like Unix, like
I don't know what BSD is.
it's an operating system. Yeah.
Back when I was in the NSA, we used Unix, but I
I think we use more Linux now, like Kali.
Oh, Linux,
I
yeah.
don't know, I could be wrong. I'm not in the NSA, so I
Right.
couldn't say.
However,
As easily, they compartmentalize the software for the operating system, right? It's easier to customize and manipulate.
well, that's like, I call this my web page, but actually I'm not responsible for a lot of it. Because if you look at the source, I didn't write all of that.
It's a great template, though.
So I'm just using that tool, but somebody else is involved in making it look this way. But now say I take a paragraph from the postmodern generator, which is what that site was, right? So, I take this, and if I submit that to my postmodern literature teacher as my term paper, am I plagiarizing?
Well, no.
It's a harder question, isn't it? Because there is that article that doesn't actually exist except for that one time that you copied it, right? So your teacher won't be able to look it up and say, hey, you plagiarized this article. So is that plagiarism? You want to say yes? Isn't this fun?
It's
Deliberately trying to make this really difficult.
But that all copies of that book were destroyed.
That's true too.
It just makes it a moral thing. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily.
What?
But at the same time, that's a randomly generated
I would-
thing, so it
so-
technically doesn't have an author. The author would be the program. But if you think about it, then the author of that program, would that be considered the author?
No, you would be the author, you'd be the editor at that point, right?
What was your question?
Well, so let's say you download it. Okay, so theoretically, if you download every possible scientific article that you can find on a topic of tuberculosis, and you generate articles, you generate more and more and more, wouldn't there be at a point where it runs out of?
No.
Just like password collisions?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's like I can use 5 words to create an infinitely long sentence. Boring as heck, but it's still, you know, like pie, right? Right?
Yeah, isn't it a coincidence that pi has the same number of decibels or digits in it than the English language, something like 26,000? There's got to be more than 26,000 words in the English language, right?
Pi? Pi has no limit. It's
Yeah, it's
an infinitely
Oh, right.
non-repeating
They
decimal.
just brought it out to 26,000.
What? Oh, yeah, that was, yeah, but you could go for it. And phi is another one. There's others. There's all sorts of them. Yeah. The infinite's a real hellacious problem. Is from point A to B is an infinite number of points. But from A to C is an infinite number of points that's obviously bigger than this infinite number. In fact, you can never go anywhere. In order to go from one place to another, you have to go half the distance, then half the distance, then half the distance, and half the distance. You'll never get there. Yes? You all know this one, Zeno's paradoxes, right? We don't have to cover those. So there's all kinds of problems with the infinite. You can't even start. Aristotle had a solution, he thought, but everyone thinks that the solution fails. So it's kind of interesting. Best book, by the way, on the infinite is Everything and More that I'm familiar with. Really fun. If you like math, you'll love that book. If you don't like math, you'll probably still love the book. But there's a chance you might not.
By whom?
David Foster Wallace.
Does it talk about sizes of infinity?
The whole history of it,
Oh, just the history of infinity.
various types of infinity. There's lots of different types. So that's really cool. But now, back to the plagiarism thing, because I only have a few minutes left. So what if I took something from the postmodern generator and ran it through Redneck? So like I took this is an article I got from postmodern. In the works of Fellini, a predominant concept is the distinction between within and without. So I ran that through Redneck, and I get Foucault's power relations and the neo-textual paradigm of discourse in the works of Fellini. A predominant concept is the distinction between within and without.
Would you consider that paraphrasing or just crappy grammar?
Well, that's perfectly good grammatically in Redneckese.
I don't want to read that. I can't read it.
Now, so the question I have is this plagiarism? Or did I just create something completely unique and mine?
Of nonsense.
Whether it would get an A in of nonsense, maybe?
I
It makes sense to me, actually.
Well, that's scary. Yeah, I know.
How are we defining that?
Well, that's what I'm messing with. I don't think plagiarism's a real thing. I mean, you could be blatantly obvious. I got a term paper once from a student who selected St. Paul as their philosopher. Perfectly fine, St. Paul, interesting philosopher, lots of interesting discussions about St. Paul. And she said, St. Paul wrote, and she gave me a foot-long piece of St. Paul. And then she said, and then he wrote, and he gave me another foot-long, and then he wrote, and another one, and then he wrote, and another one. You know, a whole paper full of St. Paul with just her saying, and you know, and so I emailed her and I said, well, St. Paul has an A, but you still need to write your paper. You get it? That's not really how you can spend time enjoying the vocabulary, which is the goal, right? You know, 'cause thinking, writing. How do you learn vocabulary? By reading, writing, talking, listening, you know, all that stuff, right? That's how you become immersed in the vocabulary. So just going on the web going, the mechanics of that is all you're really getting, right? But the end result is not that you're learning the philosophical vocabulary that you're paying for. You're paying for this course, right? You really can learn a lot. This philosophy course can screw you up for the rest of your life if you take it seriously.
So does that mean we shouldn't take it seriously?
Well, no, I think that kind of being screwed up is excellent for us.
It's part of the human condition where the escapism comes in. That's why he likes the whole virtual reality, because it allows him to blank out of it. Or
And alcohol.
be subsumed by, by the whole
I didn't used to drink,
gravity of it.
but the doctor recommended it. You know, so
But is it the
now
wine
I
or the
use
whiskey?
a brandy in the evening,
A little bit of brandy?
or Jamison's whiskey,
Jamison?
just because of the name. You know, you have. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I'm driving.
No, you know, I hate those because they make me nauseous. I don't like the situations where like they're, you know,
Drink VR drive.
roller coaster, you know, you put the thing on and you're like, barf, you know, all over, and that's, you don't want to do. So, that was fun. So term paper, so I do have recommendations, thoughts on how to write the best paper.
That is an ancient photograph or painting.
Yes, I saw it when I was checking out of my quarters in Hawaii, and it was on the counter. And so I asked them if I could have a copy of it, and they gave me a copy of it. But I've seen it on the internet, it's all over. So that's hilarious. But like if you're going to give me a paper on, say, Daniel Dennett, say he was born in 1948, you know, he's been teaching at Tufts University. I don't really need that. What I need is for you to think Daniel Dennett's a brilliant philosopher that takes the side of the atheists today, and yet most of what he says is perfectly acceptable to theists, you know, or things of that sort.
So to write something more akin to, that would get you kind of like a lightning strike, kind of like J.R.R. Tolkien did. Sit down and he just did his outline for years and years and years, getting drunk at the pub that they still haven't honored his name. And then he sat and he just one-shotted just large swaths of story and plot, and then had his friends pick it apart as they were drinking together after school was out.
The ink spots, right? They called themselves the ink spots, or the ink.
I forget the name, yeah, couldn't tell you.
C.S. Lewis was one.
Yeah?
So, I haven't confused you yet. I will, if you keep coming, hopefully. So that will be good. It's a good kind of confusion. I like to think of it as like if what philosophy does for you is it helps you learn that you're in a box. And that the problems that you often find in the box are because the frame of the box keeps you from solutions. If you learn how to get out of the box and look at the box, then you can find the solutions. And we can do that in multiple levels. We realize that the language we're using, there's lots of different languages, and they all have their own words for things. It's not the case that French is the true language and all the other languages are false. That would be just dumb, right? But if I say, il pleut, it's raining, I don't, if you think il pleut means it's raining, in a way that's right, because that's a good translation of it. But if you say that that's what the French mean, that it's raining, that's wrong, because when the French say it's raining, they say il pleut. Did I totally screw that up for you?
I get the gist of it.
Yes.
So,
So quiz questions. I asked you what the 10 Commandments were. That's just fun. We'll talk about that when you get back. I actually have in my notes, I have how many minutes do I have? We're done, right? Let me, so if we go to my class notes and other items and favorite commandments. So these are some other commandments I've gotten from students that I think are hilarious. Thou shalt not covet thy wife. Thou shalt not worship idol gods. Those are lazy gods that don't do anything, Thou shalt not sleep with thy neighbor. Thou shalt not convent the neighbor's wife. It's not really right. Convent, you send your neighbor's wife to the convent? That's not right. Thou shalt not covet with another man's wife. That's where you're standing next to his wife, and the two of you are saying, wow, what a neat car. I'd love to have one of those, right? And you're both coveting at once. Don't kill the man. Thou shalt not accept no other gods above thyself.
what?
Do not steal. This one's fun because that's the medal. Thou shalt not give a quiz on the first day of class, which I always do. Thou shalt harm thy neighbor. Don't forget the 10 Commandments. Don't piss off the boss. Don't make golden cows. That was pretty interesting. Remember Aaron and everybody when he comes down from the hill. It's kind of fun. Don't speed on base. That's a federal offense. It's important. So I've got all kinds of pay the tithe. Don't covet. This is the way it was actually written. Don't covet neighbor's wife.
0 effort.
Did they put that into the redneck?
Pardon?
Did they put that into the redneck thingy?
I don't think so.
They might have put it into the morons.
Because I don't think I had covered that at the time. So that's just fun. By the way, the quizzes, you get an A for the quiz if you send me one.
Oh.
okay.
So it's not like you have to get them right. There is no, I'm just curious what you think are the 10 Commandments.
So could we put something like the last one that
You could put whatever you like. I used to save them and post them here, but I've stopped doing that because it gets to be too much to accumulate. But it's still, thou shalt not have class when it's minus 25.
Seriously though.
Yeah, that's,
Amen.
I should make a memory?
you guys should have fun, hopefully. If I'm annoying the heck out of you over anything, email me or chat.
No, I went to Nazi Heritage class. And then I graduated a year early and went out to California. And now I'm back.
Be safe out there. Live, survive.
Yep. You too.
Oh, no.
these are all on the web, so you can,
Excuse me?
this is on the web, so you can just go to that page.
That's when I find out where it's
Ah, you want me to go back to that page then?
good.
The easiest way, there's that's this particular syllabus.
Mm-hmm.
And how I got to it.
Was that a doctorate?
I've been called that, but I don't have a doctorate actually. I have a master's years ago.
What's your master's? What's the difference between your master's and your doctorate?
Well, at my school, they didn't have a PhD program, so I maxed out there. But I could have gone to other places and in a sense started my graduate level all over again. But I joined the Army instead.
Sounded like much more fun.
It was, actually. But, yeah, so I don't have a PhD.
You don't know about me, I'm here for electrical engineering, so I wanted to take this class because it sounded like the most fun being registered solar and making up for mistakes back years ago. So,
Well, it can become addictive.
it's like a program.
Yeah, when I
Going to
first
school.
went to school for college, it was during the Vietnam War, and I didn't want to go to Vietnam. And I had thought I wanted to be a priest, but the last year of high school, I discovered sex. Thought, well, I don't want to be a priest. I want to find out more about the opposite sex, right?
Right.
So I went to college, but I didn't know what for. So I went for music because I was in the band, and I thought I could do fine in music. Turned out I didn't have something called talent, and so I needed to switch my major or go to Vietnam. So I went to the counselor and she opened the book, and it was like anthropology. And I thought, well, but you have to grow a long beard and dig in the dirt. I didn't want to do that. It was sociology, and I confused that with social work. And I thought, well, I don't want to be poor and work with poor people, right? You know. And then the next one was psychology, and I thought, every psychology major I've met is crazy, you know. So I didn't want that. So I turned the page in philosophy. I didn't know what philosophy was, but it had 18 credits free electives. So I figured, aha, I'll take those free electives, find out what I do like, and then switch again.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up for philosophy. And so I had the intro to philosophy and intro to logic the first semester. I was a philosophy major. And both courses were absolutely fantastic. Loved them both. And Mr. Williams in Intro to Philosophy, and it tilted his head, looked at the class. They were like all seniors because it was really more of a senior level class right, at the time. Because everybody in the college had to take it as a senior year class before they graduated. But here I am, basically halfway through freshman year taking it. And they smoked in class. I was like, I was in a French cafe or something, you know.
Or in
Very,
Japan,
very
modern
weird.
day Japan.
And so here I am, and Mr. Williams kind of tilted his head, and he looked at the class and said, if God is all powerful, can he create a rock that's too heavy for him to lift? And I thought, well, of course, God can do anything, so he can create a rock that's too heavy for him to lift. And I started to feel sweat on my, you know, 'cause I was raised Roman Catholic. God can do anything.
Except
Wait a minute.
There's something that you can't do.
And it was like, what? So, absolutely fascinating, and it kept me enthralled. I'm still coming. When I'm off, I read philosophy stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, you know, contemporary. Oh, it could be you know,
Keeps them grown,
contemporary
yeah.
about the ancients, but
Right.
it's an incredibly dynamic field because the folks that are dealing with it are trying to figure out how everything, all the newest things, all fit together into one big, understandable picture that explains the good life,
Mm-hmm.
how we should live, how we should treat our our neighbors.
Political science and intro to logic were the other two classes that were available. And you know, I totally get you there. Where it's just you want to put all the puzzle pieces together. You feel like it's something you do have value. So I think it'll be.
Well, I'm Bill.
I'm Adam.
I had
would be something I use all the time. Very entertaining. I try to laugh about it a little bit, 'cause I'm a bit, non-denominational when I do get religious. Is it okay to get religious on occasion?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, one of my
It,
favorite movies is The Life of Brian.
that's a great movie.
And I think it's a good Christian position to say you have to look on the bright side of life. You know?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. Sometimes easier than others.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that I got lucky when I came to get back enrolled in the degree program. But I was finagled into registration late because of the conditions of my appeal from 20 years ago, 17 some odd years ago. I'm happy I was able to find a class that I think I'm going to enjoy. Like, it was really hard last semester getting back into being a poor college student. I'm not working right now. It was
It's a good pun too, because you can be a poor college student and you can be a poor college student.
yeah, and so
But I was there.
here,
Yeah.
and it's going to be entertaining. I think it's going to be good. I don't know if I'll be able to keep the pace up through summer, but I have the opportunity to if things work out. And it's going to be good to, I don't know, the book learning and the math and science. I have math out here at the river. I like going to this campus. It's not the same bustle of main campus. I live on the east side of town, so it's entertaining. It's just the drive is what's entertaining. It could kill me.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if it, oh, you did it.